All right. Thank you, Cassie. Hi, Shasta. Hi, Leslie. You know, Cassie said, what spurred today's topic? And she and I were talking, and I said, I must admit, filling these coaching slots is somewhat stressful. So once the invitation is sent, I find myself constantly checking the website to see who signed up. And when I see that a coach has signed up, my heart beats a little faster. I'm relieved, and I'm also filled with gratitude. And I'm so grateful to the volunteers. They have so much enthusiasm and dedication. And after all, volunteers are the heart of Writer Coaches of Montana. Without the volunteers, we don't exist. So our volunteer coaches are liaisons who facilitate understanding between generations. I read a quote once that stated the writing abilities of students is a reflection of the writers in a community. And I've observed firsthand the communication and the collaboration between a student and a coach. Both parties are respectful and responsive, and connections are made between the teenager and the senior. It is obvious to the students that the coaches really care about them and their journey to become confident, competent writers. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be a member of Writing Coaches of Montana, to work with teachers who are willing to open their classrooms and coaches that are willing to put in the time to provide meaningful work to grow a positive relationship between today's students and the community members to make connections across the generations.
Thank you, Jeannie. That's wonderful. Yeah, I mean, really, we just wanted people to come in and offer their stories of the connections that have been happening. And then Leslie, I'm happy to discuss any topic around how do we do this more effectively, or how have we seen each other succeed? And I'd be curious to hear from you first about why you did choose to show up, and sort of what you've seen that's worked, or ways that you want to connect further.
I guess, well, one generational thing is to make sure that we're connecting with what the teachers want out of us today. Because I'm not, when there was one day, maybe the very first one that I coached, almost everybody I was with had been an educator. And that's not my background. And so to me, I don't always know what the teachers are thinking. And maybe some of them they've never worked with us, so they're not thinking, I don't know that they have a game plan, but it's like, oh, we're going to try this and let's see what happens. But so that's kind of one generation thing, because now I am getting pretty generationally separated. My background, we got hammered with, grammar and punctuation. And I don't know, is that still true? And I think in some classes, especially our higher level high school kids, we're going to see that it's there. But, kind of what are the expectations? I see, I'm jumping into what can we do? But also the other question is, there are some kids that you sit down and work with and they are so easy. They want to be a good writer. They just, they have stuff on the paper. I won't say they're going to talk back, but, they kind of question you why it's a back and forth and it's there. And those guys are so easy to coach. And then you just reach other people that I don't know if those are the ones I want to know more about. How do you connect with somebody who's kind of looking at you like, I don't know what I'm doing here, and I'm not sure I really want to be doing it.
Nope.
I mean?
That's such a good question.
Yeah, that is such a good question.
No, it really is. Oh, you said so much here. And remind me your professional background, because I think I know a little bit, but I don't want to make assumptions.
I am an engineer.
That's right.
And I ended up, by the end of my career, doing so much writing.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's like, what came first, the cart or because did I end up with the job that I had because I could write because of my background in school?
Mhm.
But it's also, I do this because I feel like you get into jobs where you don't think there's going to be a lot of writing, and then you end up writing.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's so important.
Well, you're the perfect coach then. Really, really, because no, I'm so glad you brought up so many important things here. The fact that so many coaches are educators, not surprising, but not necessarily entirely the demographic we want to see, right? Because that diversity of coach backgrounds is huge for the exact
Yeah.
reason that you just said. Um, so many students are going to go into professions or just community circles where they think that writing isn't important, and then they're going to learn that it is.
They can do something, they can spin it.
Mm.
Like, you can do something that they don't have to be kind of on the straight path if they can write. When I say
Right.
the straight path, I don't even know an example off the top of my head.
But it's such a huge skill set, and sometimes it's sort of implied. And so, I mean, that's the reason that we really are trying to diversify coaching backgrounds, for this exact reason, so that every student can see themselves, right? Because some students
Right.
don't want to go on and do certain things that are writing heavy, but that doesn't mean they don't need this as a skill to help them achieve their goals. It's wonderful. So thanks for your background, first of all. So you're not in the wrong place. Don't worry that everyone else is an educator. We want you here. Please stick
Yeah.
around. That's great. I would love to hear from, well, first of all, Jeannie has decades of experience in the classroom, so she's a great one to get into the mind of teachers. And then Shasta is a college student, which means she was recently a high school student. So I think both of you can answer a lot better than I can. Jeannie, maybe if you want to speak to the teacher side of things, and then Shasta, if you want to talk to the connection, especially you've brought up an interest in how to connect with people who maybe aren't present right away.
Yeah.
So yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. As far as teachers go, one thing I feel my responsibility as, say, the Flathead County coordinator is to press the teacher for the definition of the assignment and for a rubric. I think it's extremely important that they provide guidelines for the coach, something really tangible that the coach can see. The last couple of times, my teachers have done like a little video screenplay, and they've explained the background for the assignment, what they've been working with the kids, and the goal that they have for the assignment. And I think that's been extremely helpful for the coach. Writing Coaches of Montana has a list of questions that I think are a really good background to facilitate questioning with the kids. And it's always a good idea to say, okay, what is the point you're trying to make? What is it you want your reader or listener to really get out of this? And the teachers, I'm telling you, I think it takes a lot of courage to sign up for writing coaches, because you have community members who, a lot of them are not educators, walking into your classroom. And even though we caution them not to be judgmental, it's still a risk for those teachers. So I really applaud them for saying, okay, let's have these kids get an outside coach. I have been extremely fortunate, I believe, with the coaches I have. I have an editor, I have a colonel from the Army, I have a health care communicator and a physician, and just people that are incredibly interested in youth. So I don't know, like I said, pressing the teacher to be really succinct about what it is they want, and then take it from there, and always be really ready and willing to talk to any coach, to answer any questions they may have, to make them feel really comfortable. I think it's really important for me to check in constantly with the coach and making sure that they have a good comfort level.
Jeannie, thank you. And Leslie, the interesting thing about what we do is sort of there's best practices, and this team tries to share those with each other, but it does look a little bit different. And so hearing some of Jeannie's advice, I'm like, oh, I'm going to take a note on that, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, it can be vice versa, but you let us know if any of that resonates for you in your coaching.
It did. Well, and I think the fact that you guys are trying to get the rubric, you know, even though like some of our rubric was pretty short, we still had what they were doing.
Glad that's helpful. Yeah. Shasta, do you want to speak to sort of connecting with folks who maybe don't seem like they're initially very present?
Yeah, totally. So I'll just start by saying I'm in a very unique position because, like Cassie said, I was only in high school, like what, 3 years ago. So something that's really actually just refreshing about WCM is the emphasis on writing. Because when I was in high school 3 years ago, we didn't have that. And so a lot of my peers were raised in the academic community, starting like elementary school, thinking we're not writers because it's not easy to put sentences together. And so that kind of thinking, I think, it evolves the older you get. And so when you get to high school, if that's kind of all you think is that I'm not a very good writer, I can't write, I don't see how sentences go together, it can create a student who doesn't, like you said, doesn't really know where they are, doesn't really know how to move forward, and doesn't really see the, I guess, the power that writing has later on in life.
Mhm.
Something that I find is really helpful. I had a student, and I'm only a month into this internship, but in one of my coaching sessions, I had a student who really was not up to par with the assignment, didn't really like writing, and she told me that herself. And instead of kind of jumping right into criticism and being like, okay, well, you can do this better, you can do this better, I was like, okay, why? And she was like, well, I just don't really understand the assignment. I was sick, kind of these little,
Mhm.
fluff things where it's like, okay, kind of dancing away from really why. But anyway, we had a conversation, and it was only like a 5-minute conversation, but gradually I could tell that she was kind of shifting from, oh, you're just going to tell me how to write better, to, okay, now let's discuss the assignment. And so you have so much more experience than me with the coaching process. But from a student perspective, I think just shifting the focus from just plain old criticism, which I know is not at all what you guys seek to do anyway, but shifting that focus in the student's mind from that to, okay, this is a safe space for me to grow as a writer, but also as a student. And I've just already seen so many like connections being made. So I think just the more you can connect to a student personally, the more effective you're going to be.
Mhm.
And I know I'm preaching to the choir because of course you guys know that, but seriously, I'm shocked sometimes with my peers at how ingrained the idea of I'm not a writer, I never will be, and so why even try? And so I think just the more you can break down those walls, just break down those walls. And yeah, I hope that was a little bit helpful.
Yeah.
Oh, it's wonderful. I mean, it's really embodying this idea of meeting them where they're at, which I think I can't speak for every teacher, but Leslie, I'd say getting into the minds of teachers, they're constantly just, we're just trying to meet them where they're at. And some students on certain levels are here, or skill sets are here, and the others are here. And then you flip it to a different subject and it's the opposite, right? So it's just, it's constantly changing. And so I'll give you a little bit of a teacher perspective that I gained recently that I just was delighted with. In addition to just, they're so grateful. They're so excited and so grateful when we debrief with them afterwards, because they're hearing from their students that it's working. And that's all they can ask for. And the fact that it's community members who aren't necessarily tied to public schools in the first place, I think is even more meaningful, because sometimes, I could be wrong, Jeannie, correct me if I'm wrong, but in teaching, sometimes it can be a little bit isolating, like you're in the trenches, right? You're like, oh, I've got to hit this learning objective, and this student's over here, and this student's over here, not to mention all the social, emotional stuff going on in addition to academics. And so I think they just get really excited, and there's more hope infused in the situation when they realize that there are other people in the community who care, who aren't getting paid to care, right? They're showing up out of their own free will to care. And this is a topic that we're going to touch on a little bit more in our December meetup. But sometimes coaches come to me and say, I really don't know if I did enough. Like, I don't know if the paper changed enough. And so much of this is literally just showing up, even if all you do is talk about, how hard this rubric is to understand or something like that. Like Shasta was saying, just connecting with them on a human level, that kind of social emotional connection actually is demonstrated through research to show that that's going to help academics, because the ones who shut off academically often feel like there's no hope in them becoming X, Y, or Z in the learning objective of what they're trying to do. And so showing up and just, like, for instance, the other day I was coaching on the take a stand, and the student picked a topic that I totally disagree with personally, but whatever, I'm there to coach. That's not my part, right? So and I think he was kind of ready, for me to go, well, and instead I go, that's a great point. How are we going to build on that? Tell me a little more. And he starts giving me all these cool, awesome personal anecdotes to back up his argument. And by the end of it, there's like not enough white space on the paper because he's added so much more, right?
See,
And
that's great.
It's so fun to watch them light up when you support them, And so I would say, don't worry too much if you're not doing enough. And if the student feels like they're shut off, I would rather you talk with them about, one of the coaches said recently, the student didn't have anything on the paper, didn't have any ideas. And the prompt was to write something about you care about. So he said, for the next 20 minutes, we talked about skateboarding. And you know what? That's what the student cares about. And that, even though it wasn't in the writing yet, it was talking to them about what the prompt was. And that's all thinking, right? So something will get on paper. And I just think students get really surprised when we don't fulfill the stereotype that they expect either of the critic, when we're the supporter. And then we can add in criticism once we've built that rapport, but it takes a minute, especially when you're meeting for 15 minutes, right? It's hard. What we're asking for is both simple but profound. And so don't feel like you're the only one who isn't sure about the outcome, because it's messy. And I don't know, personally, that's what gets me really excited about it, because it's that organic human interaction. But there's a lot there, there's a lot of options to take, and they're not all going to go the way that we hope,
Right.
Yeah. I mean, what about you, Leslie? What about times that you were coaching where you feel like it really did go well? And like, what were some things that worked in that moment?
I think I don't know, I'm going to call it my sweet spot, is where they're not really struggling that they'll never be a writer. They're just, they know they've got some amount of skill there, but whether the prompt's not working with them or something's not, but they kind of have an idea, but it's just not gelled. They do have something on the paper, but maybe they have one reason and they need three, or, just being in that discussion. But they're not turning me, I guess when I say my sweet spot is they're willing to go along with the process. And then it's easy for me. It's pulling out the kids that just are, I don't know, are, like you said, they've already got a concept that they're not ready to write or something. The other place I really felt not good was we did an international baccalaureate class at Hellgate High School. I walked in, this girl had a perfectly written, from my standpoint, deal, and she wanted help with grammar and punctuation. We needed your editor. I was so out of my water. So,
but you're absolutely right. That's a tough ask, because we have those priorities, right? Content, and then organization, and then grammar. And if you're already to the high end of grammar, I mean, good on those students.
Oh, I was like,
Well,
Yeah.
that's a good problem, I guess, but I'm
it was
sorry.
a great problem. But
Right.
it just, for me, I walked out of there and went, oh my goodness, this is the diversity that is in this school system. Now, not necessarily in that classroom, because I suspect everybody in that classroom had pretty good skills, or they wouldn't have been there.
Right.
But you get into other classrooms and just how they mix or match students, you do see what the teachers are working with. And I do feel value. And I guess that's why I come back. So
Good. Oh, that delights us. Thank you. There was another cute, well, I don't know if cute's the right word, but I loved the anecdote. I was talking with another teacher recently, and I said, one of the things that I get so excited about as a side consequence of what we do is there is a stereotype of the aloof teenager, right? And I don't know about for all of you, but oftentimes for me, even if, like, let's say I'm walking into a high school and I see a group of teenagers and they're acting like teenagers, you know what I mean? They're
Yeah.
roughhousing or whatever. And that's kind of the stereotype. But then you get them into a classroom and you get them one-on-one, and that kind of goes away, right? Like
Yeah.
they can't really hide behind everyone else, and they really bring themselves there. And I just said, one of my passions is youth empowerment and helping them develop their voices. And that's part of what we do. And so I said to this teacher, I love in what we do that the stereotype of aloof teenager kind of dissolves after you meet one-on-one with them and you hear a little bit more about what they care about. And that, might be different depending on how much they engage in the process. But even if you talk to them for 20 minutes about skateboarding and they're delighted about it, that moment of connection is so beautiful. And here was where I was delightfully surprised. The teacher turned to me and goes, oh yeah, that's a great consequence. But the one that I'm so excited about is their opinions of community members who are older change. And I thought that was so cool that
That's great.
it's
Yeah.
reciprocal. That, she didn't really fill in the blanks for me about what those beliefs might have been or exactly what it sounds like. But afterwards, they say things like, oh, that coach knew so much, or, oh, she had so many experiences to share with me, and that was so helpful. Oh, and they had this trick that they learned a while, and it's like, there's just this beautiful moment of realizing we're so much more than the expectations that we have for each other on a larger level.
Mhm.
And that's what I love about the one-on-one model. I don't think that would happen otherwise. And teachers obviously have the time to get to know their students, but we get to know them pretty quickly in a one-on-one setting. And that's what I just hear teachers gush about, that they're just so thankful. So you're doing great, just showing up and trying. No, this is great.
That because I guess that's part of the comment about get people to come to the coaches training, is trying to tell people what level do they need to bring in,
Our
what
answer.
words-
Oh no, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, what words are you using?
Great question. I would welcome anyone. And by anyone, I mean anyone. I mean, just like Shasta's saying, do you know how much it means to a student to hear a coach say, oh, I hated writing when I was in 10th grade too, but then I realized that I could do it through X, Y, and Z experience. I mean, that lights a student up to realize that. Or like you and you're, I didn't expect to be a writer, yet look at me here now with engineering. It got me ahead in my career because I figured out how to communicate. So please send us anyone with any background. In fact,
Okay.
I would like to see coach backgrounds diversify even more. I'd like to see people in trades. I like to see people who have not gone to higher education necessarily, because some of the students that we're working with aren't going to choose those paths either. And we tend to skew on that side with coaches because I think that's sort of associated with a value of writing, but it's more than just writing. I mean, the irony of us being writing coaches is most of what we do is talk, right? We don't sit there and write anything. Then the students might make comments and write things here and there, but it's such an oral communication system. So just showing up and being willing to have that conversation. I honestly would say anyone who can pass a background check and is over 18 and wants to show up and have a conversation with a student to try to meet them where they're at, please send them our way. We would love to have them. I mean, am I right, Jeannie and Shasta? Am I missing anything there?
I guess my first thought was have kind of a positive attitude, be open to diverse opinions and
Mhm.
ideas. But again, all people, I think of people that are really close to me that are not college educated, but they are good listeners and they have good commentary skills. And being older, they're just been exposed to many different experiences. And I think that's the beauty of it. For example, that one Army colonel that I have, he's just great. He's so kind of different. And he just walks in and he's just the kids, he's kind of all attention at first, and then they sit down and you can see they just sort of melt. And it's a beautiful thing, but that's what I was thinking.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. I think I love the diversity of coaches, because it is super valuable to have people who have many years of professional experience, whether that be a trade or some other sort of scientific job or whatever. But I also think it's so important to have college kids talk to these high school kids, because it's scary going into college. And I mean, just to talk with someone who's in college and I don't know, who's a little bit closer in age too, can kind of evaporate those walls a little
Mhm.
there too, if you can just connect on different levels. So I love that concentration on diversity in coaches. I think that's so important and you can't go wrong with that. So
I would agree. I mean, another part of what we do is, and this was so funny last year when we were online, a lot of students preferred online coaching because they said it was less awkward. And I said, well, we're not trying to get around those social emotional developmental steps either. Like, we need you to be able to speak with adults in person. And so it's good to have that in person piece as well. But I would agree with you, Shasta, that it's not about any one type of communication. It's about being able to communicate with people across the age, right? And so I agree with you that the reflection that we have in the age of coaches is something I think we're really proud of. And I think it keeps students interested and teachers on their toes, that you don't know who your coach is going to be. And that's the whole point. If your writing can speak to an audience, a general audience of you don't know who's going to pick it up, that's exactly what it needs to do. So it's good that you have a coach from this background this time, or this age this time, or this cultural perspective this time, so that you can understand how to develop your voice to communicate in a way that anyone could understand it. So that's, yeah, please, Leslie, the more coaches you can send our way, the better, because they are everything to us. So yeah.
Well, just remember, I am getting from my demographic, so that means Shasta has to be out
That's perfectly fine. That's okay.
cruising the walks to get another demographic. Because no, Shasta, I hugely agree with you. I think it makes so much difference to have somebody say, in 1 year, in 2 years, in 4 years, whatever, you're going to need this skill. The kid is going to like, okay, that's in my short range, whatever. For somebody like me, it's like, yeah, I'll get there. Or, but no, like, this is coming up quick. I'd better pay attention.
Yeah, and it's just nice that coaches can speak across to all of that. So yeah, I mean, we want coaches of all ages, absolutely, positively, and all professional backgrounds. Like I said, just the whole gamut. That's something we pride ourselves on and are constantly working on. So that's good. Yeah. Well, I know there's only 4 of us, so I don't think we're going to keep us the whole hour, but I'd love to hear just any other anecdotes or just sort of insights that we think we should share with each other. And Leslie, I hope this was helpful. And if it wasn't, or if you have more questions, like Jeannie said, open door. And I know that you're more than willing to communicate. So that's good. Thank you.
Yeah, I do talk. Yeah.
We welcome talkers. That's what we do. Right. So no, but I just mean that asking for how to have more support is so important to us, because we want you to feel supported so that students feel supported, so that it keeps being this beautiful organization. So please know that open door policy always with us. That's really important. So yeah, any other I don't know, just last minute insights or sweet
Oh.
moments? Oh, Jeannie. Yeah.
Well, I do have a statement that one of my coaches wrote that I'd like to read. And it is from a gentleman, and he said, "Being a writing coach is great. We get the best, a friendly welcome into our schools." Note, I said our schools. This program gets you thinking that way. With kids long gone, we've lost touch with enthusiastic young people. We've forgotten. We pay taxes, but had no feeling about what was going on in those buildings. Well, it is understandable. Schools need to fortify to protect the kids, but the people in town feel blocked out too. After a couple hours with enthusiastic young writers, you can't help but get fired up yourself. It's infectious, and you feel a part of something bigger, something connected. I thought that was really beautiful.
Oh, that was lovely. And exactly what we're talking about. I mean, we did this around Thanksgiving time as families start gathering because sometimes, the cross-generational communications are there and sometimes they're not. And we just wanted to remind folks of the ways that we try to do that through our organization. And I think there aren't many opportunities for that to happen outside of the family and communities. And so that's just something that we're really excited about and we want to continue to keep doing. We think that's a strength. And obviously, as we've talked to teachers, so do they. So thank you. We appreciate you.